A moment of silence in a somber Washington today as we remember the victims of that tragic shooting in Arizona.
We will talk about this and more. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Amy Walter.
Every day at noon Eastern, we bring you the latest in politics. It's twitter.com/Rick Klein, twitter.com/Amy E. Walter to follow along throughout the day. And Amy, just a shocking turn of events over the weekend. Everyone who works in politics will remember where they were when they heard the news of the tragic shooting on Saturday morning.
Absolutely. And anybody who's ever worked for a member of Congress will know how this feels as well, especially for those folks who've been out campaigning or working with their members. So we're starting off today, actually, for our first Top Line hitting pause. Official Washington takes a break from legislative business in order to really take in a lot of what happened in Tucson this weekend. We will get back to the politics, debating, of course, healthcare legislation next week. The real question, of course, Rick, is whether this actually changes the tone in Washington or whether soon enough we're going to be back to the political wrangling and the
That's right. Everyone could agree the whole legislative schedule gets pushed off. And that moment this morning where you saw on the Capitol steps hundreds, if not thousands, of staff members, the folks who are the unsung heroes of so much of this, the folks who live in Washington, many of them, and do so much work for members of Congress. Of course, one of them killed on Saturday as well. Next up today, gun politics. As attention turns to politics again, we kind of know the script by now, but new talk of what this means for the nation's gun laws, a new bill being introduced today by a pro-gun control member of Congress, and also an interesting development. We're hearing from a number of members of Congress, including Jason Chaffetz, a Republican from Utah, and Heath Shuler, a Democrat from North Carolina, who say they're actually planning on arming themselves out at public events. Of course, one of the things a lot of folks don't know is that most members of Congress don't get any protection, any kind of security of their own, so they have to provide their own. So this is, I don't know if it'll be a trend exactly, but an interesting development.
Right, and we'll also start hearing about people, are they going to wear bulletproof vests? Are they going to stop holding meetings? Remember, there was a lot of talk during the healthcare debate about members saying we're not going to hold these town hall meetings because they're getting too dangerous, which is really problematic. Then we move on next to the politics of Palin. If there was anybody who was talked about more this weekend in politics than Sarah Palin, I don't know who that was. Of course, a lot of talk about the fact that her website, her Facebook site, featuring members of Congress or congressional districts with targets on them, her campaign spokespeople have since pushed back. But the real question, Rick, is what is Sarah Palin going to say? She has not spoken publicly. She sent out an email. In fact, let's put that email up for you. She apparently was emailing with Glenn Beck over the weekend saying, I hate violence. Our children will not have peace if politicos just capitalize on this. Glenn Beck reading that on his radio show today. But this is a woman who may want to be president of the United States. The expectation is she needs to do more than just send out an email.
And it's a big moment for her because there's so much talk about her. You look to a candidate, a potential candidate, to appear presidential in these moments. We haven't heard anything from her yet publicly. She'll be very closely watched to see the response. And finally today, of course, scheduled long before any of this happened, rush hour in Afghanistan. Joe Biden has arrived in Afghanistan this morning, where he actually may cross paths with Mitt Romney. I'm not sure if they've coordinated their schedules at all, but the different political motivations for going as the vice president has versus Mitt Romney, who has to start fleshing out those foreign policy credentials.
And both recognizing, I think, that Afghanistan is going to be a big issue in 2012, certainly a lot more than it was in 2010.
Well, on this very sad day, we're honored to be joined by former Congressman Jim Kolbe, a Republican of Arizona, and actually the immediate predecessor in the congressional district that Gabby Giffords now represents. Congressman, I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to know if you're hearing anything from on the ground in Tucson, from her staff, from her family, anything that suggests we know anything more about her condition.
No, I don't think we've heard anything more. I understand there's going to be another medical press conference just about as the time we're talking here now on her condition, but I don't think that we're going to see much difference right now. The key thing is the doctors have told us is these 48 hours. The swelling of the brain is the big problem. Once she gets through that, then we'll just have to see how she recovers and what kind of mental faculties may be impaired as a result of this injury. But it's going to be a long, difficult recovery.
That sounds Right. Congressman, I want to talk to you about Arizona for a second. You represent this district 22 years,
22
right?
years, the same district, right? I
and-
mean, it changed a little bit in redistricting, but it was the basic
it's
district.
similar, pretty much the same district. There's a lot of talk now in the media. Is there something wrong with Arizona?
No.
And so, yeah, I want to ask you about that. Is there a gun culture that makes Arizona different from somebody else?
We don't even have the highest proportion of guns. I mean, I think Pennsylvania, with its hunters, has the largest number of per capita gun owners. No, there isn't anything in Arizona that's uniquely different. There has been this issue along the border of the immigration.
Right.
We have been the epicenter of the illegal immigration, and the frustration of people about that has been tremendous. There's no question about that. And I agree with the sheriff when he said that our political discourse needs to be cooled down. We need to lower the tone. But I think it's a tremendous mistake to link that to this particular incident, which seems to be an incident caused by or undertaken by a seriously deranged young man, and doesn't seem to have any kind of connection to a specific political issue.
But is it worth Arizona taking a look at its gun laws, do you think, or is this, are we moving a step too far?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to take change the gun laws as a real look. Mexico has probably some of the toughest gun laws in the world, and they lost 11,000 people last year in the drug wars down there. So people are going to be able to get their hands on guns, and these kinds of incidents are going to occur. This is the kind of thing that comes with the territory of being in politics. And I'm not saying, you know, just expect to have a shooting incident, but members of Congress know when you're out there reaching out to your constituents, which they're going to continue to do, and talk to people, they are at the same time going to be the object of some kind of hostility. We certainly had that when I was in office.
Well, I want to ask you about your time in office and what we've seen even in the last 4 years since you've been out of office. You mentioned the tone, and whether or not that had anything to do with the fact that this apparently deranged gunman goes in there and shoots up at the Safeway. Is there something that we should be re-examining, reanalyzing, taking a more careful look at the way that we describe politics, the way that we talk in our discourse these days?
Absolutely. It's part of, we should be looking at that. It's not just in our political discourse, but in all of our civil discourse. You see this whether you're talking about in schools, you see it whether you're talking to other kinds of government officials. There's a tone, a rhetoric that I think we haven't seen before. I don't know what to attribute that to, whether it's just a kind of a decline in the character of Americans. I don't think that's the case. I think internet and communications has a lot to do with it. People can put up the most outrageous things on there, and it feeds on itself. So we do need to lower this tone. We do need to have a civil discourse. We need to be talking about healthcare. We need to be talking about immigration, but we need to talk about it in a way in which leads us to find solutions, not just to try to make hits against each other.
Well, you talked about this recently, too, that you even felt unsafe at times going into town hall meetings when you were a member.
I wouldn't say unsafe was the word that I used, but there were certainly times my staff from time to time would have, usually without my knowledge, they would have law enforcement people there, usually plainclothes people in the back. I don't know if that would have prevented anything like this from happening. But there is no possible way you're going to be able to provide the kind of security for every member of Congress that you do for a president or a high-level official, even the leadership in the Congress, the Speaker and the majority and minority leaders. You just can't do that for 535 other members of the House and Senate.
Yeah, and I want to ask you just briefly, you knew Judge John Roll as well, and there's several other victims here, and they're really tremendous stories all around. Yeah. But this is a sad moment for, I've got to think, a lot of folks in Tucson and beyond.
It's a terrible moment. I'm sure there are thousands upon thousands of people, obviously, that know Gabby and know Judge Roll, and all the others, I'm sure, have family and friends around them that they also know. Judge Roll was really an outstanding judge. He was, I call him a judge's judge. He was highly respected, not only in the legal community, but the community at large. He was a very thoughtful judge, and he's going to be sorely missed. All right, former Congressman Jim Kolbe, we really appreciate you being with us. I know this is a difficult time for everyone associated with Arizona. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.